So good morning, everybody. My name is Sam Jeffers. I'm with Alabama A&M. I work under Dr. Troy Bowman. I did this presentation yesterday with the Loggers Council, so I'll try to keep it a little briefer than I had it for them because it might not be specifically targeted to some of y'all. But what we did was we have a partnership with the University of Georgia to collect information on logging businesses within the state. This is covering a paper that we published this year. We have plans to do the same thing for the state of Mississippi, and then we're in the process of kind of getting additional information on this in the form of interviews with business owners. We are targeting business owners who have owned their business for less than 10 years, who are under 35 years of age, or who are a part of a minority group. We're trying to understand what it is that takes to start a logging business, and then the challenges associated with running that business. And so you'll see a lot of information on like demographics and then kind of economic climate for these businesses. We had I think 283 surveys sent out across the state. We got about 64 back, which is about 23%. And you can see kind of from all over the state. Most of the logging businesses within the state are within the south part of the state, but regardless. I think the thing that stood out to me with this information was that we have a business owner population that's getting up in age, and that's kind of been the trend for the past 20 years. This study's been going on since 1987, so we've got a lot of information. But that number just keeps creeping up, and the average employee age is just 8 years behind the business owner. So there's some challenges related to business succession for these folks, because if you're passing it on to someone that's 8 years younger than you, they're going to have to pass it on pretty quickly as well. The average owner age is 56 years old, and the average employee age is about 48. The oldest one I saw in the surveys that we had was an 82-year-old man running a business, and I think he'd been in business for about 60 years. So these people work very hard. This is the bell curve for just the age of business owners in blue and the age of employees in orange. You can see it definitely skews towards the right. And so one of the things that we're trying to figure out with this information is how to kind of attract young talent. I think trying to talk to somebody that's going to school right now and telling them, go work outside and work their butt off, and maybe not necessarily make a lot of money there in the first couple of years is kind of a challenge. So we're trying to figure out how to attract the people that are interested in that kind of work. One other thing that we noticed was that there used to be a lot of succession within families as far as passing it on to children, but there's been less and less of that as well. And I'll cover that in later slides. Which is the basic. We have the education of the business owners. You can see that there's about 30% of owners are college educated. That's a challenge we're kind of looking at regarding adoption of new technology such as like GPS or mapping in the woods. So here's some of the technology they've been using. You can see, only about 36% of businesses are using computer mapping, and only 42% are using GPS in the woods. This is the amount of products that are delivered by businesses. Log length and tree length is the typical way they deliver. This is kind of different depending on the state. So in Alabama, this is just the way it's been. And I think we had the same numbers in Georgia and South Carolina, and that's been basically the same since 1987. Now let's go over that for y'all. Let's see. A lot of businesses using contract truckers. That's a challenge we've been looking at. Is that there's with COVID especially, that was exacerbated. There's not a ton of people willing to drive trucks, and contract truckers can make you more efficient because you don't have truckers sitting around waiting for a load, but they do cost more. So we have about 60% of businesses using contract truckers less than 50% of the time, versus about 30% of businesses use contract trucking about more than 75% of the time. Here are the challenges we basically coded. So these are word for word answers that we got on our surveys. We asked what challenges your business is facing, and we got more colorful language from some people on some of these. But basically just put them into different categories. The biggest challenge that businesses had were operating costs, insurance, wages, fuel, all seem to be creeping up. But there's not necessarily a good increase in the value of lumber, so businesses are kind of getting in a crunch with that. Let's see, anything else? There's, I think everybody's heard that statement, nobody wants to work anymore the past couple of years. We definitely had a lot of that. I think that this was worse during COVID. We've seen that bounce back a little bit, but it's still a challenge as far as attracting new talent. And then, of course, mill issues. I think there's an oversupply of lumber, and mills put businesses on a quota so that they can't necessarily make as much money as they need to pay all the loans and everything that they have. So trying to understand the dynamic between logging companies and mills so that everybody can so it can be more of a collaborative relationship is something we're trying to figure out. That's just diesel rates. This is data off of the Georgia survey that's been going since 1987. You can see some of these things have become bigger issues over time. So like you can see, less people are saying that this is 1992, 2007, 2017 for Georgia and South Carolina. You can see less people are saying that insurance is a challenge, but you can see that the quota, which is just mills saying they'll only take so much wood, is becoming an increasing problem. And then we had some information based off COVID just for this one survey. We definitely had companies saying they reduced production and they had some losses of employees due to COVID, but we've seen these numbers bounce back pretty quickly. It was kind of a temporary thing. This is I think the biggest thing that we got out of this was for Alabama logging companies, about 65% say they'll still be in business in the next 5 years versus 35% say they will either pass it on or close. Of that 35%, a little less than 35%, about 32% say they'll cease to operate. So about a third of businesses plan on closing in the next 5 years, which is kind of a challenge. I think that would mean a loss of capacity in logging in the state of Alabama. But that might also help with lumber prices if there's less demand. So, kind of a mixed bag on that, but there's definitely a oncoming wave of retirements and then people selling off businesses. So we'll see how the industry responds to that. I can skip over the implications, but I do want to plug, we are trying to interview logging business owners both within Alabama and Mississippi, and if any of y'all have anybody that wants to talk to me, I'm happy to talk to them. I've been kind of an earpiece for people to kind of tell me their challenges and everything, but it's all relevant information for me. So I really appreciate it, and I hope I didn't take too much time. Does anybody have any questions?
I got one. It's just a trend. Loggers are getting bigger monopoly.
Yes, sir. I didn't touch on it.
It's okay, you have to do a slide, but the bottom line, the middles are going out. What about on the lower end?
Going out as well, yeah. It's way less profitable, and they can't cut bigger tracks like some of these big companies. This is this is for Georgia, but it's still relevant for the Southeast. This is the number of businesses in the rectangles, and this is the trend line going up is the largest companies and how much lumber they're cutting. So basically, a small amount of large companies are cutting more and more land, and there's less and less businesses. So there's a lot of consolidation. I had two questions.
Actually, I think you answered that one.
Okay, good.
I was going to ask you about the population and the size of the operation.
Yeah, and just as a snapshot, this is the number of businesses for the Southeast. We got about 583 in the state of Alabama, I think. Currently, we'll see how that goes.
When you talk about insurance,
yes, sir.
What does the insurance cover?
Oh, trucking is the big one. I think truck basically has. I was in that presentation yesterday when they had the state trooper come in there. It's like bare minimum. I think you have to have a $1 million coverage to transport some hazardous materials. I think.
What does the logging companies? They have their own trucks.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, depending.
They contract.
About 14% of companies don't have a truck. So the other, 85% own at least one truck.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
so that's a big cost.
So that doesn't include the hazard insurance for the employees?
No, which I'm sure is another cost, but the trucking insurance is a big one, especially, and that's one of the things we're looking at with the technology is not a lot of companies are using dash cams, and there's, I get nervous driving around the interstate with those trucks, and it's like, I'm surprised they don't adopt technology to kind of reduce those premiums for them, so, yeah, it's definitely a big cost. Yes, sir.
Did you get a sense of what percentage black forces? Your trim was the same as your general trim?
No, sir. We're having some trouble kind of getting a good snapshot of that. But this survey doesn't necessarily cover that information. That's one thing that we're targeting specifically with the interviews. But it doesn't help us necessarily with like the size of businesses facing challenges, the larger demographics. It's more about the interviews I'm trying to cover are covering like, the costs, the labor challenges, mill relationships and things like that. So I don't actually have a good snapshot of that. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
So did you, well, 23% has responded, right?
Yes, sir.
And you said about 500 plus 580.
We had so.
The total population is a very small, like 10%, I think, out of.
Yeah, so that number would be, what we did was we used the Alabama Forestry Association mailing list. So we partnered with the Logging Council and their mailing list of registered companies, 283. The estimate was 583 from the University of Georgia for the number of businesses. I'm sure there's a little bit of swing in that. But so the 23% represents the amount of response that we had for the businesses that are registered with the state organization.
Did you guys follow up with the total amount of survey you sent?
No, we have not. No.
I think it could be, just trying to have more response.
That's a good point. Yeah. I was impressed by the amount that we got back, but speaking to them yesterday, they were all gung ho about participating because I think this information is helpful for the industry as a whole, and I think they're eager to get more snapshots like this. So it's good news. Anybody? Thank you.